How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, May 23rd, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do a season review for the 2021-22 Serie A season in Italy. And before I break down all 20 of the teams, how they finished this season, I'm going to give a quick overview as to what the Serie A season is and what it represents in Italy. Serie A represents the top 20 teams in Italy every year, and of course, they represent the top 20 clubs because you have to earn your way into the Serie A every year. The way it operates is that the top 7 clubs or so will get a chance to play outside Italy, and they get to, because if you play in Italy, you get a chance to automatically play for your domestic cup and for the respective league you play. But the top 7 get to qualify for various tournaments across Europe. And the bottom 3 teams in Serie A every year are forced into what is called relegation, where they would have to, of course, where they would have to get knocked down to the second division, meaning that the best 3 teams from the second division move up into the Serie A the next year every year. So it ensures that the most competitive 20 clubs that are in Italy are competing together with at least the highest level of competition that can be possibly achieved. And they've been able to keep a system going like this for, decades, over 100 years. And this is, of course, yet another year of that cycle. Taking a look at the team that finished at the very top of that cycle, it ended up being AC Milan. AC Milan would finish 2 points ahead of their crosstown rivals Inter Milan, as AC Milan would win the Serie A title, the Scudetto, for the second time since 2011. The last time they've won it was 2011. This is the third time they've won it in the 21st century, as the first time they won it was in 2004, just to get a sense of how competitive the Serie A title is. And not to mention that in between them winning in 2011 and them winning in 2022, Juventus would go on to win the title, I want to say 9 times in a row. And then taking a look at how they would go on to win the season just by 2 points, they would go on to win the Serie A title with the most wins in Serie A. They had 26 wins, just one more than second place Inter. They had one less draw than Inter, as they both had 4 losses. They and Inter would have the least amount of losses in the Serie A. Of course, naturally, that's how you finish with the best record in your league. And the main statistic that would jump out this season for Milan is that their goalie, Mike Manion, would go on to have a virtuoso season, as he had 17 clean sheets in the 32 matches he played. Not only did he play a month less than other Serie A goalies who had less than him, but he would go on to be the only Serie A goal to finish with more than half, with clean sheets in more than half of the games he played in Serie A. So, of course, that would be the story for AC Milan. And with them winning Serie A, they will, of course, get that automatic ticket in their own group in the 2022-23 group stage of the Champions League season, And sitting second right behind them is last year's Serie A champs, Inter Milan. Milan, like I said, would finish with one less win and one more draw than AC Milan. Their one less win would, of course, end up being the difference in the very end, as it did end up being a 2-team race, and both AC and Inter Milan had to win their last games in order to make it here. But of course, looking at how Inter would fare on the scoring leaderboard, they would have the 3rd highest scorer in Serie A in their elite Argentinian forward, Lautaro Martinez. And then they would have 2 of the top 6 assisters in Serie A. Hakan Calhanoglu and Nicolo Barella would tie for second in Serie A, as they both had 12 assists. Only Domenico Berardi of Sassuolo would have more assists than those 2 on the year, just to get a sense of how dynamic they were on the offensive side. And on the defensive side, their goalie Samir Handanovic would tie for Rui Patricio of AS Roma for the second most clean sheets in Serie A. Handanovic would do it in one less game. But with this incredible season beginning to end, Inter Milan they of course have they've written a ticket for themselves into Champions League for this upcoming season. They've punched their ticket. The third spot in Italy would go to Napoli, as Napoli finished with just one less win than Inter. They had 24 of them. They had less draws than Inter Milan and AC, and they would have 7 losses on the year. But they would go on to finish 15 points ahead of 5th place Lazio, so they would comfortably go on and earn this Champions League spot. In Napoli, I guess on the defensive side for Napoli, their goalie David Ospina would finish 4th among Serie A goalies in clean sheets, as he had 13 of them in the 31 matches he played. He would be very instrumental, as Napoli has, like I said, they're the 3rd team to punch their ticket through the Champions League. The 4th and final team that will punch their team to Champions League this year is Juventus, as Juventus is seeing a lot of players coming in and going as they are in the midst of a rebuild season, naturally after they got rid of Cristiano Ronaldo, and they're kind of testing things in here and about. Lazio, or Juventus, in Paulo Dybala's last season there, will go on to finish with 9 less points than 3rd place Napoli. They finished with 6 more points than 5th place Lazio, so they were able to get a Champions League with relative ease. They had 20 wins, 10 draws, and 8 losses. They were the top-rated team with a double-digit amount of draws. In their leaderboard, they would go on to sign the player who would finish second in the Serie A in goals, Dusan Vlahovic, as I believe he initially played for Fiorentina. So that would be a very big pickup for Juventus during the season. And then their goalie, Wojciech would go on to finish with 12 clean sheets, tied with Lukasz Skorupski of Bologna for 5th in the Serie A in clean sheets. But of course, with them finishing 6 points ahead of Lazio, they will have their ticket punched in the Champions League. But considering they finished 4th, it might be a very tough group stage that they might be placed in. And then, of course, sitting right below Juventus, holding on to the top Europa League spot, is 5th place Lazio, coming out of Rome. They will go on to finish with 6 less points than Juve and just 1 more point than 6th place Roma, as they were just able to get that Serie A spot on that last game they played. They finished with 2 more points than 7th place Fiorentina. They finished with 10 draws and 10 losses, as they had 18 wins on the season. They were the highest rated team with a double-digit amount of draws and losses combined. Lazio's leading goal scorer was their elite striker Ciro Immobile. Ciro Immobile would go on to lead the Serie A in goals yet again. I'm not exactly sure how many times he's done it, so I'm not going to make up a number. But then Lazio's leading assister was Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, as he would finish with 11 of them. And then Luis Alberto would tie for 5th, as he had 10 of them, as Lazio and Inter were the 2 teams in Serie A that had 2 players with a double-digit amount of assists, and they would each go on to finish with a player with 20 goals on the season. The difference was that, of course, Inter's goalie would finish up there within the top 2. Lazio's goalie Thomas Strakosha would finish 7th in Serie A in clean sheets, as he played 23 matchups this season. But that would give you a sense of how Lazio was able to qualify for Europa League. Sitting right below them, within the same city, is AC Roma. They finished with 1 less point, as just 1 point would, of course, separate these 2 teams. Roma's leading scorer, Tammy Abraham, would tie Giovanni Simeone of Verona for 4th place in goals scored, as he would finish with 17 of them on the year. And then taking a look at how their goalie would fare, their goalie, Rui Patricio, would tie with Samir Handanovic for the top 3 in clean sheets in Serie A, as, of course, Roma is not a team to be messed around. And this is, of course, while Mourinho was the coach. And then sitting right behind them is 7th place Fiorentina, as they get the 1 spot in the Europa Conference League qualifiers. They finished with just 1 less point than Roma, and going into their international break, looking at how their season would go on to finish. The Fiorentina goalie Pietro Terracciano, he will go on to finish with 9 clean sheets in the 32 matches he played. He would finish 8th among Serie A goalies, the most among Serie A goalies that had a single-digit amount of clean sheets. And then sitting right behind them, of course, would be the 10 teams in Italy that are qualified to play in Serie A next season, but are not going to be playing in European tournament competition. Sitting in 8th place, just 3 points below 7th place Fiorentina, is Atalanta. They would finish with 11 draws and 11 losses on the year. Sitting right below them was Hellas Verona, as they would finish with 6 less points than Atalanta. Verona's leading scorer, Giovanni Simeone, would finish with 17 goals on the season, tied with Tammy Abraham for the 4th most. And I said that earlier, but of course, just to give a little bit of credit. Sitting right below them in 10th place was Torino, as they finished with 50, tied with Sassuolo. 11th place Sassuolo would be led by the Serie A's leading assister, Domenico Berardi. He would finish with 14 of them on the year, 2 more than the duo from Inter would, I guess, individually. Taking a look at who sat behind them was 12th place Udinese, as they finished with 3 less points than Sassuolo. Sitting in 13th was Bologna, as they finished with 1 less point than Udinese. 14th place was Empoli, as they finished with 5 less points. 15th place was Sampdoria, as they finished with 5 less points than the Empoli team right ahead of them. Sampdoria's Antonio Candreva would finish tied in the top 5 for assists in the Serie A, as he would finish with 10 of them on the year. Spezia would finish 16th in Serie A, as they had 36 points, just tied with Sampdoria. Sitting below them was Salernitana, who would just avoid relegation by just 1 point. And of course, just being able to stay in the Serie A is a very good accomplishment for your team, to be one of the top 20 out of all of the clubs playing in Italy. Sitting below them, the top team that got relegated was Cagliari. Cagliari would finish with just 1 less point than Salernitana. They had 2 more losses on the season, or they had 1 less loss on the year. They had 2 more draws, and they had 1 less win than Salernitana. That would be the difference. Sitting below them was Genoa. Genoa would sit 2 points below Cagliari, as they had the least amount of wins in Serie A. They only had 4 of them. Sitting below Genoa was Venezia, as the Venetian team would have 23 losses, the most losses in Serie A, and they would have 2 more wins than Genoa, but they had 7 less draws. But Cagliari, Genoa, and Venezia are going to be the 3 teams that get demoted to Serie B, and the 30 best teams from the second division of Italy, Serie B, will be moved up to the top league in Italy. And with that said, that's virtually all I have for you with Serie A, as that concludes the 5 domestic leagues for the 2021-22 season. As Champions League comes to an end, and of course all of the other leagues are ending, I will come back with a bit for the teams that automatically qualified for Champions League. But with that said, I do want to thank everyone for listening to all 14 minutes of this piece. I want to thank the Google and ESPN websites for giving me all the facts and figures. And I do thank the FIFA websites as well. I want to thank everyone for listening, and I do hope that moving forward, there's going to be a lot more fun within these upcoming seasons. And this is just the second season that I've done this, and hopefully cheers to possibly doing this for more years. I want to thank everyone for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow. Thanks for listening to my piece. I'm James Sims. This is The Elite, and peace out. I'll catch you with more tomorrow.